History of Temecula, California. Welcome to Temecula, California, a city where the rolling vineyards meet the whispers of the past. If you've ever wondered how this sun-kissed valley became one of Southern California's most beloved destinations, then join me on a journey through the fascinating history of Temecula, California. Picture yourself standing in the heart of Old Town Temecula. The wooden boardwalks creak beneath your feet, and the scent of aged oak and coffee drifts from restored 19th-century buildings. But long before this place became a bustling hub for wine lovers and weekend travelers, it was home to the Luiseno people, who lived here for thousands of years, thriving along the Temecula Creek. The name Temecula comes from their word Temecunga, meaning the place of the sun. When Spanish missionaries arrived in the late 1700s, they found this valley glowing under endless sunlight. Ranchos began to appear in the early 1800s, part of the great wave of Mexican land grants that reshaped California. One of the most famous, Rancho Temecula, laid the foundation for the town's future. By the 1850s, American settlers and stagecoaches started arriving. The Butterfield Overland Mail route passed right through Temecula, making it a critical stop between St. Louis and San Francisco. Imagine dusty travelers stopping here for rest, a meal, and a glimpse of the wild frontier that California once was. As decades passed, Temecula remained a quiet ranching community. But in the 1960s, a transformation began. Developers saw potential in the valley's warm climate and scenic hills. Vineyards sprouted across the landscape, and the Temecula Valley wine country was born. With each passing year, more visitors came to taste its wines, explore its history, and take in its breathtaking sunsets. Temecula officially became a city on December 1, 1989, blending its Old West charm with modern growth. Today, it's home to over 110,000 residents, a thriving pechanga resort casino, championship golf courses, and miles of vineyard-lined roads that seem to go on forever. And yet, beneath all that modern beauty, the story of Temecula still beats with the same rhythm. A blend of Native American roots, Spanish influence, frontier grit, and Californian spirit. So the next time you stroll through Old Town Temecula, look beyond the wine glasses and shop fronts. Listen closely. You might just hear the echoes of the past. The pioneers, the ranchers, and the Luiseno people. All part of the enduring history of Temecula, California. The ancient origins, history of Temecula, California, pre-1800. Before Temecula became known for its wineries, golf courses, and sun-drenched charm, it was the sacred heartland of an ancient people, the Luiseno Indians, whose ancestors had lived in this valley long before any European ever set foot here. For thousands of years, the Luiseno people thrived in what we now call Temecula, California. They were not one single tribe, but a network of 7 bands: the Pechanga, La Jolla, Soboba, Pala, Rincon, Palma, and San Luis Rey. Each of these bands shared the same deep connection to the land, the rivers, and the mountains that surrounded the valley. According to Pechanga tradition, their ancestors have lived here for more than 10,000 years. In their creation story, life itself began in the Temecula Valley. They call this sacred place Exva Temiku, the place where Sky Father and Earth Mother came together. It was here they believed that the balance of life was born. The people who lived here were known as the Temiquayam, and their village, Temecunga, meant the place of the sun. Over time, the word evolved into Temecula. Some translations describe it as the sun that shines through the mist, a poetic reflection of the valley's early mornings, when fog rolls over the hills and sunlight slowly pierces through. The first written record of this region came centuries later. In October 1797, a Spanish Franciscan missionary named Father Juan Norberto de Santiago and Captain Pedro Lasalda ventured through the area on an expedition. Father Santiago recorded what he saw in his journal: an Indian village called Temecula, nestled within the valley's gentle landscape. That brief note in a missionary's log marked the beginning of Temecula's recorded history, a bridge between the world of the Luiseno people and the arrival of the Spanish explorers who would forever change California's story. The 1800s, from missions to the American frontier. As the 19th century dawned, the story of Temecula, California entered a new and turbulent chapter, one shaped by Spanish missionaries, Mexican ranchos, and the early days of the American frontier. Much of what we know about Temecula's early 1800s is pieced together from fragments. Records were tragically lost in the Great Fire that followed the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, erasing decades of written history. But the land itself remembers, and through surviving accounts, we can still trace the outlines of this pivotal century. In 1798, Spanish missionaries founded the Mission San Luis Rey de Francia, naming the native people of this region the San Luisenos, later shortened to Luisenos. By the 1820s, a satellite mission, San Antonio de Paula, had been built nearby, further extending Spanish influence into the Temecula Valley. When Mexico gained independence from Spain, vast tracts of land were divided into ranchos, marking a new era in the history of Temecula, California. Among these were Rancho Temecula, granted to Felix Valdez, Rancho Paba, given to Vicente Moraga in 1844, and Rancho Little Temecula, awarded a year later to Pablo Apis, a Luiseno who had converted at Mission San Luis Rey. Apis's grant was rare, one of the few times a native Californian received official ownership of ancestral land. A fourth grant, Rancho Santa Rosa, was issued to Juan Moreno in 1846, stretching across the hills west of Temecula. But the mid-1840s also brought bloodshed. On December 6, 1846, amid the turmoil of the Mexican-American War, the Battle of San Pascual erupted near San Diego. Not long after, tragedy struck the Temecula Valley. In what became known as the Temecula Massacre, California forces led by José Lugo and Cahuilla allies pursued Luiseno villagers, killing between 40 and 100 people near today's Vail Lake Dam. A dark and painful moment that echoes through Temecula's past. When the war ended and California came under U.S. control, American settlers began to arrive. In 1852, a treaty between the Luiseno people and the U.S. government was signed inside McGee Store in Temecula, but it was never ratified. Disputes over land ownership grew fierce. The Luisenos challenged the Mexican land grants, arguing that the land was supposed to remain in trust for them. Their case reached the California Land Commission in 1853, and after years of legal struggle, the court eventually sided with the heirs of Pablo Apis. Despite that victory, the Luisenos were gradually pushed off their land. When Lewis Wolfe purchased the Apis grant in 1872, many of the original residents were forced to leave. By 1875, the remaining Luiseno families were officially evicted from Temecula Creek, marking the end of an era. Even as these conflicts unfolded, Temecula was becoming a vital stop on the western frontier. In 1857, stagecoaches began running from Warner Ranch to Colton, passing through Temecula. A year later, the Butterfield Overland Mail, the first major transcontinental stage line, made Temecula's McGee Store one of its regular stops. By 1859, Temecula earned a distinction that few towns could match. It became home to the first inland post office in Southern California, only the second post office ever established in the entire state. As the Civil War swept across America, the Butterfield route shut down, but Temecula remained a key crossroads for travelers, traders, and ranchers. In 1862, merchant Lewis Wolfe, the same man who had bought the Apis land, married Ramona Place, a woman of mixed indigenous and European heritage. Their home became a gathering place for locals and travelers alike. When author Helen Hunt Jackson visited in the early 1880s, their story inspired her famous novel Ramona, which immortalized the struggles and spirit of early California. That same decade brought dramatic change. In 1882, the U.S. government established the Pechanga Indian Reservation, finally giving the Luiseno people a permanent homeland 6 miles south of Temecula. That same year, the California Southern Railroad reached Temecula, linking it to the coast and the interior for the first time. But progress was fragile. Just a few years later, severe floods destroyed parts of the railway, and the canyon line was abandoned. The old Temecula station, once buzzing with life, was left to decay, used as a barn before eventually being torn down. By the 1890s, Temecula found new purpose in its granite. Stone from local quarries was shipped across California, forming courthouse steps, curbstones, and building blocks. The little valley had become a place of quiet industry, exporting both grain and cattle, and laying the foundation for the vibrant city it would one day become. 1900 to 1989, from cattle ranch to California wine country. As the 20th century began, the quiet valley of Temecula, California was still a ranching frontier, a land of open skies, oak-dotted hills, and endless cattle pastures. But a man named Walter Vail would soon reshape its destiny. In 1904, Walter Vail, a rancher originally from Nova Scotia, arrived in California with a vision. Alongside his business partners, he began purchasing massive stretches of land across Southern California. Among his most ambitious acquisitions were the fertile acres of the Temecula Valley. Vail bought 38,000 acres of the old Rancho Temecula, Rancho Paba, and the northern half of Rancho Little Temecula. Tragically, just 2 years later, Vail was struck and killed by a streetcar in Los Angeles. His son, Malin Vail, took over the family operations and carried his father's dream forward. Under Malin's leadership, the Vail Ranch became one of the largest and most successful ranches in California. By 1914, Malin Vail and several local ranchers founded the first National Bank of Temecula on Front Street, signaling that the small rural community was beginning to grow. A year later, in 1915, Temecula celebrated another milestone: its first paved, two-lane road, which would one day become the pathway linking the valley to the outside world. By the late 1940s, the Vail Ranch covered more than 87,000 acres. In 1948, the family built a dam on Temecula Creek, creating Vail Lake, a shimmering reservoir that remains a landmark to this day. Through the mid-1960s, the Vail Ranch was the beating heart of the local economy. Cattle and agriculture were the lifeblood of Temecula, sustaining every shop, service, and family in the valley. But change was coming. In 1964, the Vail family sold the massive ranch to the Kaiser Aetna Partnership, a development company with grand plans for the land. Their project, renamed Rancho California, envisioned transforming the rural valley into a modern community. The idea was simple: a place where families could live surrounded by open space, sunshine, and opportunity. At that time, the population was still tiny. The 1970 U.S. Census recorded just 2,769 people living across the Murrieta, Rancho California, Temecula region. Yet growth came swiftly. That same year, local residents formed the Temecula Town Association, a nonprofit organization dedicated to shaping the community's future. A few years later, in 1977, the Rancho California Water District was established, a vital step in supporting the region's coming development. By 1979, Temecula had its own radio station, KRTM 88.9 FM, broadcasting local voices across the valley. And when the 1980 census came around, the area's population had surged to over 10,000 residents, a remarkable 269% increase in just one decade. The valley's transformation accelerated in 1984, when Temecula was officially recognized as a California wine region under the name Temecula American Viticultural Area, later renamed the Temecula Valley AVA. Vineyards began dotting the hills, and the region's Mediterranean climate proved ideal for producing award-winning wines. Then came a game-changer: the completion of Interstate 15 in 1985. For the first time, Temecula was directly connected to San Diego and Los Angeles, making it possible for people to live in Temecula and commute to the coast. What had once been a quiet ranching valley was suddenly one of the most promising new communities in Southern California. Finally, on December 1, 1989, Temecula officially incorporated as a city. Ron Parks became the city's first mayor, marking the birth of modern Temecula, a place that blended small-town roots with big city ambition. This was the moment when Temecula stepped fully into the modern era, ready to grow, thrive, and define its own identity in the vast story of California's history. 1990 present, the modern rise of Temecula, California. By the dawn of the 1990s, Temecula, California had officially stepped into a new era. The once quiet ranch town had become a fast-growing city with a bright future. When the United States Census Bureau conducted its first official count after incorporation in 1990, Temecula's population stood at just over 27,000 people. But growth came quickly. Families from San Diego, Los Angeles, and Orange County began moving to Temecula throughout the 1990s, drawn by its affordable homes, safe neighborhoods, and the promise of a better life surrounded by rolling vineyards and golden hills. The Temecula Valley wine country became the centerpiece of this new identity, a perfect blend of rural charm and California sophistication. In 1995, the Pechanga Band of Luiseno Indians launched the Pechanga Powwow, reviving a centuries-old cultural tradition that continues to honor the tribe's deep roots in the valley. It was more than a celebration. It was a reminder that Temecula's story began long before the first settlers arrived. The city continued to grow and modernize. On October 27, 1999, the Promenade Temecula Mall opened its doors, marking the city's arrival as a regional hub for shopping, dining, and entertainment. What was once ranchland had transformed into a vibrant suburban destination. By the mid-2000s, Temecula was booming. In 2005, the city annexed the master-planned community of Red Hawk, pushing the population to around 90,000 residents. New homes, schools, and businesses appeared almost overnight, transforming Temecula into one of the fastest-growing cities in Southern California. Then came the 2007 financial crisis. Like many communities across the nation, Temecula was hit hard by the housing market collapse. Foreclosures rose, construction slowed, and uncertainty filled the air. But Temecula's community spirit held strong. The city weathered the storm and emerged more resilient than ever. In 2012, Temecula and the Pechanga tribe stood together to protect the valley's landscape, blocking a proposed rock quarry project south of the city. The Pechanga later purchased the 365-acre site, renaming it Puesca Mountain, preserving the land as sacred ground for future generations. Just a year later, in 2013, the city celebrated another milestone with the opening of the Temecula Valley Hospital. For the first time, residents had access to a full-service hospital right in their community, reflecting the city's evolution from a small town into a self-sustaining urban center. And in 2016, Temecula once again honored its past while embracing its future. The historic Vail headquarters reopened as a living monument within the Red Hawk Town Center, transforming 19th-century ranch buildings, like the Old Wolf store, into vibrant spaces for dining, shopping, and local gatherings. Today, Temecula is a city that perfectly balances heritage and progress. Its vineyards draw visitors from around the world, while its historic old town continues to echo the stories of pioneers, ranchers, and the Luiseno people who shaped this valley. From ancient villages to modern wineries, the history of Temecula, California is a story of resilience, renewal, and enduring beauty. If you enjoyed this journey through time, tracing the history of Temecula, California from its ancient origins to its modern renaissance, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to History Love, and turn on notifications for more deep dives into the stories that shaped our world. Every city has a past, and here at History Love, we bring those pasts back to life.